Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man Podcast. Today's episode is a fascinating one with a truly fascinating guest. Today I interview Adam von Rothfelder, who is a former MMA fighter, a two-time Versace model, current entrepreneur, founder of the Strong Coffee Company, and a guy who has done a ton of self-work in becoming a thoughtful and caring leader, father, and husband. In today's episode, we talk about how Adam losing a brother to an overdose at 22 years of age set his life on a new trajectory. We also talk about how MMA, mixed martial arts, being in the ring, trying to destroy the other guy on the other side of you, actually allowed him to emotionally process the trauma of his brother's death. We talk about him having an abusive father, but learning to love him unconditionally, what that looked like, and reconciling their relationship before it was too late. We also talk about what skills athletes develop as a result of training that help them in other areas of life. So I will say that Adam curses liberally in his everyday speech as well as this episode. He is his true, authentic self here. So if cursing offends you, I would recommend, or if you got kids listening, I would recommend you turn the sound down or try to just get over your thoughts of cursing and look at the ideas presented in the discussion. Adam is a super high energy, introspective, and an interesting guy. And listening to this man talk was entertaining and enlightening. I got a ton out of this conversation. I know you guys can get something out of it too. I hope this inspires you to be a better man. Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Better Man Podcast. Today I am joined by an old friend of mine, Adam von Rothfelder. He is a former professional fighter, MMA fighter. He has been a celebrity trainer. He is now the CEO of Strong Coffee. I thought he would make a really interesting guest to discuss just the development and the self-development and the changes that we go through as just progressing through life. He's also a dad. And so that is my intro. So Adam, thank you for joining me.
That sums it up, man. I appreciate the intro and for being on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So you and I met long time, probably 10 years ago. I should also mention just to curate some interest that you were also a model for Versace at some point,
A
right?
two-time Versace model.
Two-time Versace model. That's a
and
pretty cool.
Star of NBC show Strong, which was also the top inspirational show on Netflix for over 3.5 years after NBC cut the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
So there's a little bit more hook for anybody who is thinking about, leaving before the show got good. So
half the people listening just open their phone to Google Images and they're looking now. Anyways, so yeah, back when I met you, it's probably 10 years ago. You were doing things a lot different than you were doing now. I think you had like an overall, just the overall self brand that I got from you was just like a different person, similar to what you're doing now. I feel like you've gone through, kind of a lot of changes. But one thing I wanted to start just by asking was, can you talk about just your transition from being, a professional MMA fighter to going, like, how do you transition out of being like a professional fighter and then going to like a normal career, or not even a more normal career, but just a different career?
Well, I think what you mean is like, how do you go from, how does any, professional athlete, let alone one that, masters violence in a way, then like effectively start answering ones and zero questions and normalizing their life outside of the ring, outside of the gym. I lived in the gym and the ring for years. I think the big difference between myself and a lot of other professional athletes is that I was always, what drove me to be a fighter was not my want to be a professional athlete. I at one point in my life when I was much younger, that was something I daydreamed about, but it wasn't something that I really sought after high school.
Mm-hmm.
When my brother died, when I was 22, and I heard this ad on that radio, and I went and signed up for this no holds barred kickboxing tournament. And 2 weeks later, after my brother's death, I fought in this tournament, and I did pretty well, but I felt better than I did, so it's like I didn't mind that I lost. I liked the positive channel of aggression
Mm-hmm.
and me being able to tap into some emotions that I wasn't feeling around my brother's passing. A
Mm.
year later, I fought that same tournament and won. And it was at that point that I decided I would start taking training to another level, because I hadn't trained that entire year in between those two tournaments other than just working out. And I had a martial arts background as a child and a gymnast, and I was a soccer player. I was just an athlete. So I think when
Mm-hmm.
my interest, it was purely my development as a professional athlete was a byproduct of like a cathartic process, right? Like I was healing, and because I was good at this thing and I had a certain desire to be better at anything I did, I became a professional fighter, while at the same time having massive interests outside of it. And I was always really into brands and marketing and kind of like looking at it, but something I never studied in any kind of conventional manner. I just felt like I had a strong confidence in what I knew I liked, and what I knew I liked, I would then see become like a trend of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a confidence in myself to, leave fighting and know that I could do something else, because I was really good at getting higher paid for fights, or getting sponsorships, or getting other people's sponsorships, and creating decks for people. And the transition I took, I don't think was as, baffling as, as it would seem. But like, I mean, I, over the time of development as a professional athlete who always was a fan of performance and fitness and nutrition, I continued my education throughout that entire time. And I leveraged my passion for being in the gym to just becoming a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And, that quickly led to me owning my own gym within a year of, me retiring from fighting and being a trainer and opening up my own space, which,
Mm-hmm.
I had a plan. I had confidence in a unique idea and approach to fitness that I knew less than 1% of the world would even had seen at this point, because it was so ahead of its time. And the transition felt really easy for me, because I felt really confident in what I was doing and why I was doing it. So, when you met me, my whole goal was to take the context of violence out of training like a fighter and moving like one, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to utilize, use your body in a way, but without having to be in a gym that felt, a fighting gym that felt so like barbaric and intimidating to so many people. And the conversations that are had there are just not really appropriate for most people, even still today.
Mm-hmm.
Like appropriate meaning like you don't want to really hear about that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this one thing that you said when I first met you. You're talking about CrossFit people. You said CrossFit people they want to be fighters, but they're too scared to take a punch to the face.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I
Well, I mean,
I thought that's funny.
when my fighting career kind of was right at its, its would be peak, because I got hurt and never really saw my real true potential in the ring. Uh,
Did you get hurt as a result of in a fight, or did you get hurt
Training, it's always
training?
training. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's always training. You always go, because you're not going hard. You end up you're slightly soft and you get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I yeah, I mean, so anyways, uh yeah, separated shoulder.
Mm.
But like, I believe that when I was in LA, it was maybe the third or fourth CrossFit chain at the time. And I saw these people run into California Chicken Cafe. And I was like, CrossFit? I was like, what is that? Some like holy kind of like fitness thing, you know? And
Cross.
yeah. Like I didn't really know. Nobody heard of it yet at this point, right? And I went up to the guy and started talking to him, and he's like, no, man, we do, this, and this, and all this. And I'm like, oh, that sounds crazy. And I just feel that at the time, it sounded like all the training we do, but their competition is like taking that training and then measuring it. Our competition was taking that training and applying it in something that is, you don't have to measure really, because it's
Right.
there's a definitive winner or a loser,
Yeah.
it's generally speaking.
Yeah.
The guy knocked out lost.
Yeah. And that's, that's kind of, it kind of reminds me a lot of my, cause I was a collegiate lacrosse player, and that was why I was really interested in fitness. Cause I love training, so that like when I was on the field, I would have more strength and more endurance than the other guy, and I'd be able to outlast people. But that there wasn't, you don't measure it you measure it based on goals, but like it's not necessarily that like the more fit person wins at the end of the game. It's just, well, who had better skill, who had a better team.
Totally.
So like that's interesting to me, because I think a lot of the reason why I like being an athlete was because I just really liked working out. And so it sounds like that's something similar with you. You just really like you like the fitness aspect of it, and that, so it wasn't a weird transition for you at all.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I mean, there were obviously parts that were tough, like organization, management of the schedule. I mean, still has never been my strong suit. I'm somebody who doesn't work well within a certain set of rules, where I had to really work on myself, not being selfish in ways, because when you are a professional athlete and or a high level collegiate athlete, you kind of are selfish with your time and with your energy. And there'd be days that I just didn't want to like train somebody, so I'd be like thinking about calling in sick so I could go work out myself. And it was, and I mean, that was me in my youth. And then, and then I had kids, and then I had a whole nother reason of why I was doing it. It wasn't.
Yeah. When did you have kids? How old are you?
I was 20, I was 30, 31, 30. Wait, how old am I now? So
that's the question. How old am I now? I ask myself that
so
3 times a week.
41 minus 9. Yeah, I was 32 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I mean, but I went through my transition too. I mean, I'll mention was, I almost left out a pretty big part of the process, is that when I left fighting, I was kind of forced to leave fighting in a way because of my shoulder and why I was doing it, right? But then I did like being a professional athlete. Like I did enjoy, the fruits of my labor. When I hurt myself, I moved out to California, and I had been there for about 6 months, and I got a text message while filming a commercial, this national commercial that I booked, that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. So when I moved back, a big reason of why I moved back was to, take time to like try to heal past relationships that, me and my dad had big relationship issues. And so the transition was kind of caught up in really, I just didn't have time to even think about what was happening. The fact that I gave all this up. I remember a friend of mine, only about 7 months after giving up, like leaving fighting, was in town in Milwaukee for a fight. And I went to go train with him and warm up. And then it felt like years already. just like getting in the cage with him and banging with him, because I felt like in that 7 months, the transition I took was, 180 degrees of what's important to me, and beating somebody up wasn't really important to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't even, my energy did not want to, supply for that purpose. So
Mm-hmm.
it was focused on the time at this new relationship that I was in, my
Mm-hmm.
business, which, is my wife now 12 years later. And the fact
Mm-hmm.
that my dad is, dying from leukemia.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many questions that came up as just in those few minutes talking with you, and the first thing I want to ask, because I do want to get into, if you don't mind, I would love to talk about how did you go about addressing healing your relationship with your dad. I think that's something that many of us can benefit from, and I think most of us wait until it's too late, and you
Yeah,
know,
man.
um,
People all wait till it's too late. Like if there's one thing you take from this podcast is don't let petty shit and even like not, bigger shit really get in the way of like what the bigger thing really is,
mhm,
which is, the fact that like unconditional love and not ever wanting to hold on to the regrets that you could have in some point later in life, where it's, if not for them that you would heal a relationship, like do it for your future self, so that you do not feel the pain of past trauma that has gone like unsettled, unsaid, unresolved in any manner. When I moved back from California, I had been living away for years, and I got a job right away and started working, and my dad's cancer was progressing, and I started my own business. And when I started my own business, I hired him as a maintenance man.
mm,
And so what I did is I flipped the hierarchy, like I changed the dynamics of the relationship. He wanted a part-time job because he was retired and he wanted to get out of the house.
mhm,
So I paid him, $18 an hour to come and like fix shit at the gym or like run errands for me.
mhm.
And that gave us an ability to have a conversation where he didn't see me as like under him for being my dad, like the
Yeah.
way he was raised. So it's like I was now kind of like above him because he had to ask me a question,
Mhm.
or he'd be like, hey, can I use the card to go buy this and this and this? Sure, you need to use my money to go buy your things, right? For you, it's like
Yeah.
this very big shift in our relationship that was fabricated by me. I mean, I would
Mhm.
break a shelf at my gym just to make him come and work on it. So he
Mhm.
had something to do, and all right, like I'd be like, oh, my dad hasn't been here in 2 weeks. And I'd like kick a hole in the drywall and he'd have to like come and patch the drywall. I'd be like, I don't know what you guys are always fucking doing in here. Fucking, like, and I swear to God, I mean, it was just me breaking shit at times. I mean, there's a couple things that would go broken from other people, but I can count at least 5 separate occasions that I broke things over the course of the 2 years that he saw me grow my business from an 800 square foot studio to a 10,000 square foot gym in downtown Milwaukee.
Mhm.
And I was very driven in a lot of ways to succeed in this gym because I always, if anything, I also just really wanted him to kind of, in one way, eat shit, like eat crow about where I would be in my life if I didn't do things a certain way,
Mhm.
right? And be proud of me at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Like I wanted that because I really never got that from him. I always felt like I could have been better or different, just like always. So it was interesting seeing how much interest he took in me being a local business owner and growing. And
Mhm.
he would call me up when he saw something in the news about a new gym franchise moving in like near my area or whatever. And I'd be like, cool, dad. I'm like, I'll fuck him up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And you know, the gym drench, I mean, grew to be, Milwaukee at the time, like Milwaukee's hottest gym. I mean, if there was like the dopest nightclub, that would be like of gyms, that would have been the one in
Hmm.
my city for years until
Wow.
I, shut it down when I was just, when it really didn't match like the passion and the direction and beliefs of like how I wanted to stay fit anymore. So I
Hmm.
was, it was really just like owning a business for me. If I'm going to do it, I better fucking love it. Like
Hmm.
really love it. Cause like, I don't want to work,
Hmm.
and that was like, I mean, it was funny. I mean, the gym was successful. We had hundreds and hundreds of members, and it was just like, nah, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm. And so you had the gym for how long before you were just like
About 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Was it? Would you just get sick of running the gym day to day, or like what? And why wouldn't you just turn it over to somebody else?
There was two things. One, I did DMT, and that was the day that I kind of realized that I didn't want to be doing what I was doing, because I was doing for my own personal fitness was very different at that point
Hmm.
from what I was teaching at Drench. And I knew what I was doing for my own personal fitness, these people's skill level and strength and just like will and desire to do what I was doing would not
Hmm.
happen. Like maybe like a third of them would convert.
Yeah.
And it was like after spending all my time with like Ido Portal and doing a lot of movement that I just altered the way I moved and changed and shifted through my training as an evolution of, injuries and age or goals. What really do I define as being strong, right?
Hmm.
And I found myself pigeonholed in heavy kettlebell swings and grueling sprinting and TRX workouts that were, it was just like, that's like what everybody wanted. They wanted me to fucking murder them. And I
Yeah.
just kind of was like, I was done murdering people, because like really I wanted to create, and I felt like I was just constantly just beating the shit out of people. But like, that's what they fucking wanted.
Yeah.
And
No,
believe me, like
people want to be tortured in their workouts.
I used a lot of intelligence in my training to limit the actual like possibility of destroying anybody. In the 5 years of Drench, we had one injury in the gym the entire time, right?
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. And I
Hmm.
mean, one member in our entire gym ever got hurt in the 5 years, is like, so we, for me, it was just, I wanted to create more and I wanted to do more. And my dad had now passed.
Hmm.
My daughter is, 1 year old. We're actually having another kid at this time. And I was just like, this is just not who I am. And if I'm going to be like my best self, like I got to get rid of this thing that's weighing so heavily on me. And I, at the same time found out coincidentally that my business partner had been skimming some money off the top.
Oh.
So I just said, fuck it. And I emailed every member and I said, hey, I'm done. And I just let my person who was an investor at the time just kind of eat shit with the rest of like any loss on like any of the investment and equipment that we had sitting in that space. And I just let him deal with it. Kind of like,
Wow.
you deal with the whole fucking thing. Like I'm out.
Wow. So first thing that I'm thinking of, and I'm just going to mention this, but then I want to go back because I have like some other questions I want to ask. But the first thing I'm thinking of when you're saying this is most people are not prepared, or their bodies are not appropriate. Their fitness levels are not appropriate for a lot of what they're seeing in commercial fitness. Like for CrossFit, for example, and it sounds like what you were doing, it wasn't CrossFit, but maybe it was intensity wise. It was level with CrossFit, maybe
Oh, dude,
beyond.
CrossFitters couldn't even do what we were doing.
Yeah.
Like we would have, it was so intense and like, but it was like unilateral, bilateral. I would combine like hypertrophy with plyometrics. And like, so, I mean, everybody was just fucking gas where we would have like a couple CrossFitters show up and they'd be like, dude, they're like, I know I'm not cleaning 250, but I am fried, you know,
Yeah.
but it was all like hard style kettlebell training that I've been doing for 12, 15 years at the time.
hmm Yeah. But, and, and, and it is to say that this is stuff that a lot of people want to do and they imagine that this is the way to work out. But for 90% of people, this is not appropriate. So like what you're seeing what you're seeing on, Instagram, what you're seeing on whatever you're seeing, like people working out and thinking of how athletes work out, that is appropriate for athletes, but that is not appropriate for,
Well, yeah,
45
because
year
if you're
old
gonna,
Joe who spends 10 hours a day sitting at a desk,
yeah, well, because if you're gonna train that hard, you have to also recover that hard, right?
Yeah.
And professional athletes at least do the recovery aspect of that side of the business, where it's like enthusiasts do not, right?
Mm,
Like they come in for the meat and fucking potatoes. Like it's all about the workout. You know, less than 30% of people that actually work out follow a diet, and less than 10% of them actually have functional, recovery protocols that they apply to their weekly training of any manner, right?
mm,
So, I mean, that's such a sub niche of individuals that, it's just, yeah, training that hard, that intense all the time. Like, you don't know what their sleep is like. You don't know what
mm,
their heart rate variability. I don't know what their hormone panels look like. I don't know any of that shit. And
mhm,
the smarter I got, the more I was against so much of what I was doing, even though I knew what I was doing was at like the higher level of intelligence of how you could deliver that psychologically palatable workout, right? Because that's
mhm,
what people want. They want to like they have this trigger in their head that says, I must be dying. And that's the only thing that will taste good to them. You
mhm.
have them doing fucking neck circles and thoracic slides and shit. And they're like, get me the fuck
Right.
out of here. I'm going to go have a martini, you
Yeah.
know? So it really, it was an interesting transition, myself. I mean, I opened up another gym after I shut that gym down, and it was all based around, conscious movement and,
Mhm,
doing this stuff. And about 1/3 of the members, you know, that were of Drench joined.
mhm.
And about a year later, I sold that gym to the employees that work there and, just became a celebrity trainer.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, less overhead for sure. So, yeah, I'm curious about, back to fighting. I'm curious about, so as you were talking about that, you kind of mentioned that fighting allowed you to kind of process some emotions that you weren't processing. So, I think that we think about anger as being something that's bad. I know that for me, I used to think about anger as something that was bad. I tried to repress it. And what ended up happening was it didn't get out. I was ashamed of it and it would just come out in like, it would just boil over suddenly. I'm like, whoa, I am in a rage right now and something very minor happened. And I realized that for me, like my anger it was really holding me back by not expressing it. So I'm curious for you, you know, fighting aggression, and you mentioned like that being helpful for grief. What was your experience with that? Why do you think that was helpful? Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this interview with Adam. Really quick here, our featured brand this week is Paleo Valley, and specifically I want to highlight their 100% grass-fed beef sticks. So for me, getting enough protein is really important because I need to do that if I want to build muscle, and that's a goal of mine right now. But having a high quality protein source usually takes some time and effort to make. That's why these beef sticks are great because they're grass fed, they taste great, they come with organic spices, they even have naturally occurring probiotics in them. And I can eat them on the go, I can eat them while I'm working at my desk. And I know that I'm getting something that is good for me but also tastes good and also helps my fitness goals. So we've got a special deal with them to get you 50% savings on your first order. Just go to manflowyoga.com/beefstick, or you can click the link in the show notes. Yes, I actually made a link for manflowyoga.com/beefstick. I never thought that would happen. Anyways, try them out. I think you'll really like them. And then I hope you enjoy the rest of this conversation with Adam.
It wasn't because I was overly aggressive or something. It was like a balance of between the fact that I had some anger, some displaced anger from my brother dying. My brother, some details about my brother dying, or, he died of a drug overdose and he died in, my room. So when I think about the fact that I was supposed to call him back that night and I didn't, I had a lot of guilt. And so I also at the same time didn't feel a certain level of like sadness or pain for losing my brother. It was, it just was like hidden behind a lot of layers of other emotions and confusion, different things, psychological stuff. Like I never actually saw his body. That like provides like a certain level of like closure for people. So when I was fighting, I was seeking like male on male, like bonding, like affection, like, and emotional, like sharing in a way through the fact that we're probably both angry, troubled people in some manner, because like, I'll tell you what, like nobody fucking normal like gets in a ring and starts fighting, and like, that's not their, believe me, like you had anger issues, but you still played lacrosse. You didn't like put down your stick and say, you know what, I'm just going to go and start joining these like smoker fights that they're having at this MMA school on fucking Friday nights and just start beating the shit out of people, even though I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I mean, that's literally what I did. I was playing college soccer and I was like, fuck this. I'm going to go beat the shit out of people. And I haven't done karate since I was 9 years old and I'm now 22 years old, and I mean, like, and it was clearly because I had something fucked up going on in my head. And I felt like the best way to take care of it was to create pain and resolve conflict through the idea that, fighting has done that for so many for so long. It just made so much sense. I mean, fighting really does solve a lot of things. People like say it doesn't, but it does. I mean, it literally is the source of conflict resolution is generally a fight in the end, right? Whether it's with words or fists, and men are just far more familiar with the fist than the words, right? So if anybody would ever wonder, like, God, I just never knew that Adam was in that kind of pain. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe did you not notice that I went from this super funny, loving, soft, like, outspoken, sensitive type to the guy that's like now like in a ring beating the shit out of people? It's like, clearly I went through a shift.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that there's like, when you're in a fight, do you think that you're part of, the ability to tap into that aspect of your mental, your emotional health? Do you think it's because being in a fight, it's just so unrestricted that your emotions, like, they have no, like they have no boundaries, or they have no limits. Like, if you're in a fight, if you're trying to, take out the guy in the fight, in the ring with you, you can't like hold yourself back. So does that, being in that like kind of unrestricted, or being in that, you know what I'm saying, kind of that environment, does that help you access emotions that you otherwise wouldn't?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're always told not to feel those things or not to express those things. I mean, the fact of the matter is how many times have you said in your life, and you don't have to actually answer it, but like, God, I would kill that motherfucker, or I'd kill that dude, or whatever, right? Well, guess what? In the ring, you literally get to try. Thing is it's not that fucking easy when they're trying to kill you too. So what ends up happening is you get all of that out of you, And
Mm-hmm.
then what you realize is that you don't want to kill anyone. You just like really need to feel something. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe even just getting your own ass kicked is the feeling in itself that you needed, because everybody has always told you to be so fucking careful.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get hurt. Don't do this. Don't do this. Well, that in itself is a fucking experience that teaches you a massive lesson,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pain gives you a lot of education, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's whether or not that you have the ability to see it in that way, that it is there for you, not against you, so that you can develop yourself and
Mm-hmm.
resolve, greater trauma. I mean, people are like, "Oh my God, that's so scary that that you fought." Right. And I'm like, what's even scarier is like my dad, when I was 6 years old, hitting me.
Mm.
Right. But being able to fight and beating the shit out of somebody else showed me that I couldn't have done anything about it when I was a kid.
Mm.
But I could do something about it now. And it gives you a certain sense of security to understand that like you're safe, or
Yeah.
like whatever it is. It's like everybody needs something.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a lot of it was like stability and safety.
That makes a lot of sense. Like establishing, literally putting yourself into an arena and showing yourself that I can protect myself and I don't have to feel the way that I felt when I was a kid because I know that I can handle myself now. Like that seems really powerful to me.
Well, they say
I
that people recreate their childhood in their like relationships and things.
hmm
I would love to have my childhood recreated without the violence, right?
hmm
Without the fear of the violence. That said, I often forget that I can fuck somebody up. But, when reminded and prompted, I do remember very quickly, and it's something that my dad saw my, one or two of my fights,
hmm
and his whole way of talking to me shifted even more so
mm
after he saw me beating another adult man's ass that was much bigger than me, like in 14 seconds. And this person was a trained fighter.
hmm
His tone with me and just how he would even approach me was different. It was like I was his boss all the time, not just at my gym anymore.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's interesting when you think about like your relationship with your dad and how much of that is just built upon you're scared of your dad. Like I don't know about, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like every son to some extent grows up like scared of their dad to some extent.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, well, if you didn't, then you're good for your fucking dad, man. Like,
yeah.
I mean, shit. Like, if if you are not afraid of your dad, or you were not afraid of your dad growing up, you should call him right now and tell him thank you for being a good dad. Like,
Mhm.
because there are very few conversations that I have that the men I'm around that are tough, strong men that weren't scared shitless of their dad. I mean, I knew my dad was coming to beat my ass when I heard his change in his pocket jingling running up the stairs.
Mm.
And it was like prepare for battle. Like I like instantly was like, okay, I'm gonna close the door real quick. It'll give me a second to like, you know, it was so when I think about that, I mean, it was fighting was the only option I had. I
hmm
mean, because it was something I already was a
hmm
fighter. So actually just getting in the ring and just doing it and getting paid and
hmm
notoriety and you know that was a no fucking brainer.
hmm So
Nobody
like,
has ever hit me harder than my dad has ever hit me in my entire fighting career. You know,
yeah,
that's a fucking fact.
yeah,
My
the odds,
260-pound dad rocked me when I was, 12, 13 years old, far greater than any full grown man did when I was in my 20s.
yeah, that's a pretty sizable gap there. So like, how did you get to this point that, earlier in the discussion you talked about having unconditional love for your dad. what did that mean, like in terms of your actions, in terms of how you thought about your dad? Like, I think it's easy to think about, like, I think it's easy to say, we know that we should have unconditional love for the people around us, right? That's easy to say, but what did that actually mean for you when you acted it out or believed it?
Yeah, I mean, so I look at somebody in three pieces, right? I look at their heredity. I look, so their genetics. I look at their experiences that were on the outside of them. So education, the people that were in their lives. And then I look at like self-education, the life that they created for themselves and the experiences that they learned by.
Hmm.
So and that's something that I came to a realization at a much younger age, just because of some books I read at a
Yeah, I was going to ask, where did that come from?
Moshe Feldenkrais,
Okay.
actually. Awareness Through Movement was a book I read when I was maybe 22, 23 years old, 24, something like that.
Hmm.
And believe me, there was a time that I would have hit my dad in the head with a hammer and wished him dead, with the way he would come at me. But through losing my brother and through psychedelics and self-discovery of like what I was really made out of, getting into a ring and living out on my own, and I was the only one in my family that's ever moved away,
Hmm.
right? Like everybody lives within 10 minutes of my parents, lived within 10 minutes of my parents, still does. I lived in 4 different states and haven't lived near there in a long time for any type of consistency.
Hmm.
So when I look at my dad in these 3 parts, I look at his dad, who was a total fucking asshole,
Hmm.
who didn't, who barely survived the Holocaust and was just an angry person that raised 2 sons and, you know, put them against each other all the time, in which my dad felt very little value, probably have felt consistently scared and undermined, with the way that my grandpa was, iron fist, hard nosed fucking German. And and then I look at like his experiences, like my dad getting kicked out of school, or like these different things that like he went through,
Hmm.
and him raising, and then my brother being like addicted to drugs at a young age and getting in all this trouble, who's 13 years older than me. So I could put aside a lot of things that my dad said or did to me based off of his fear of his past experiences versus like the actual experience that we're having.
Hmm.
So that was how I did it. And I looked at him for the good qualities that he had. And
Hmm.
I looked at him for the bad qualities as he had, as good lessons for me.
Hmm.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was, there are things about being a father that I wouldn't have known were completely off the table if I wouldn't have had experienced them.
Hmm.
So, and then there are things that I've seen my dad do that has made me admire him in incredible ways, where it's like his work ethic
Hmm.
and ability to continue to wake up every day and continue to provide for, a family, no matter how angry he was at, whatever,
Hmm.
or how sick he was. I mean, my dad was famous for having a fever, bundling himself up in like sweatpants and a hoodie, slamming a hot toddy and sleeping on the floor for 3 hours with like heaters on him, sweating it out, waking up, having a normal temperature and rehydrating and going and working third shift.
Wow.
And like my dad was so foreign to the idea of calling in sick that the only 2 times I had ever seen him be sick, he had to have my mom call work for him
Hmm.
because he was like nervous to call in sick.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen until much later in his life, which, probably was some pre-signs of some, heart diabetes stuff that, and then cancer eventually.
Yeah.
So
What what gave
that answer
you
your question about the unconditional love, like being able to love somebody that hurt you
Yeah.
so much?
No, it's awesome because you actually provided like a framework, like you mentioned the genetics, the experiences, and the self education. Um, you actually had a process in place. And my question to that is, what prompted you to have the awareness to do that? Because most people don't actually take the time to think about these things. Most people are living their lives reactively. They don't sit and think about things. They don't plan things out in advance. They don't reflect on their beliefs and why they have them and should they change them. And so for you to have these thoughts when you're like in your early 20s to shift from I hate my I don't know if you hated your dad, but whatever
Well,
the
I'm
feelings
sure
that
I
you had,
said I hated him many times before, but
but
now
for you
I
to
don't even say that word hate because of I think it's probably one of the worst words in the fucking English dictionary.
yeah, I mean, but for you to go from that way that you felt about your dad to the way that you did feel about him in your early 20s takes some pretty massive influence to be able to start thinking differently. Was it your brother dying that led to
Yeah.
that change? Was there something else that you also started doing, or was it the fighting too, or like what all prompted that?
On the lighter note, all athletes smoke a lot of weed and get
Hmm.
really into like random philosophical and alien conspiracy shit.
I
So
missed I missed out on that.
I will tell
Tell
you
me
that
about
there are
that.
many hours spent in between training camp workouts where we're just eating food and getting high and watching documentaries and rabbit holing, right? And that was always, I was always down to rabbit hole into something. So I'm sure I picked up pieces of that, over time. But I mean, really, you hit the word on the head like when you first started talking, which is just time. I became they don't take the time
Hmm.
to do those things, to dive into that, to look into that. And, taking time is effectively a trade between the things that are important and the things that you deem not important.
Hmm.
And we have a very, it's not that we have little of it, it's that we waste so much of it. And we really don't know how much of it we actually have.
Hmm.
So at 22, I was given a great gift through losing my brother, which was the recognition and value of time.
Hmm.
And I remember, it's not there anymore, but I had this shot clock that literally appeared within days of my brother passing that kind of sat in the peripheral vision like time was always counting down, but I had no idea how much time was on this clock. Like I couldn't ever make it out. I'm in the middle of the game.
Hmm.
Just give me the fucking ball. Let me score the winning basket. Like I don't even know if it's the winning basket, but like there's no time left on this clock.
Hmm.
And that is how I made moves, every day was based off of the idea that time you know, was fleeting. And
Hmm.
I wanted to resolve as much as I could. I wanted to learn as much as I could. I wanted to achieve as much as I could. I said certain things as a young adult or as a child about being an actor or a model or like all these things and all this shit that I ever said, I
Hmm.
fucking have done.
Hmm.
And I've because of what happened to me at 22 years old and being able to truly acknowledge, the shortness of time.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, this is all really. I mean, I just think it's awesome that you're sharing all this, and it's cool because I think it just reflects really well kind of the goals of this podcast, which is to just explore, when stuff happens, how do we react to it, and how does it make us better? How do you look at something terrible that happened and make sense of it? And it sounds like you've had a lot of terrible things happen, and you've been able to figure out how to grow from them. So,
Mark Manson and the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
mhm.
He talks a lot about like it is not your fault that this has happened to you, but it is your responsibility in how
Yep.
you react to it.
Mhm.
Right? It's like, no, it is not my fault, that these things have happened, but I could have either chose to be sad and let this somebody, my brother dying, like defeat me, or I could let it fuel me.
Mhm.
Right. And I chose that shit and to be rocket fuel. Right.
Mhm.
It gave me a whole nother level of how hard I could hit someone. It gave me a whole nother level of how fast I could move on the mat. I mean, there was a reason that I went pro as fast as I did with this limited experience. It's because like I had my brother like in my fucking wing. Like
Mhm.
it was a second spirit like pushing me that gave me the ability, and I didn't squander it. And a
Mhm.
lot of people, I think, take these awful things that could be turned into just great fucking things, and they squander that energy, and they choose to just wallow in the sadness versus, you know,
Yeah.
transcend from it.
Well, I think it takes a special type of person to be able to look at it the way that you did.
But any
So,
person can be that person, right? I think like
mhm.
that's the important thing is it does take a special person, but I don't want it to be exclusive to the idea that you have to be a special person. You just have to be that fucking person, right?
Mhm.
And I think the confidence and all these things could like directly associate the idea that you're going to be that one that's going to do that.
Mhm.
But I mean, who would have ever thought that like Junior Seau or some of these athletes would kill themselves?
Mhm.
Where it's like they're the ones that succeed, that win, that this, that.
Mhm.
It's really about making every second you're faced with a decision, and you just have to keep on thinking, how do I move forward with this decision? Like is this decision taking me forward? And
Mhm.
am I true to it? Am I authentic to it? Because like if in that fact you are, then you will just like continue to grow from this like awful experience. And if it
Mhm.
is not like suiting you, you will just continue to diminish from this awful experience.
Yeah. I want to ask a question that I'm going to shift gears a little bit. But I want to ask for a lot of people who exactly, but a lot of people who probably listen to this podcast are not athletes, and I don't think they understand very well like an athlete mindset. And I would like for you to to answer what is the experience of an athlete that allows them to have, I wouldn't say better life skills, but what allows them to have, I think a lot of people might think about athletes like, oh, they know how to work out, they know how to train. Um, but what does that translate into for everyday life? Like, what are some, some skills, some mindsets, some beliefs that athletes have just in everyday life as a result of their, experience and training that people might not realize?
Grit,
Grit.
fucking grit, man. I mean,
Mhm.
I think grit is the thing that athletes, you could say dedication, and that's great, but grit gets you through the times that dedication would generally break you, where it's just like you can show up to practice 5 days a week, but are you willing to grind, on the off days, on the times that you're hurt? It's like, oh, your arms hurt. Well, I'm working my legs out. I'm looking at playbooks. I'm this and that, right?
Mhm.
It's always pivoting to focus on the idea of staying in, in the game. Um, I think that, obviously, if you really like break down the psychology of an athlete, it's, they've always done more to get more, right? Like everybody else finishes school, they go home and fucking eat Cheetos and watch cartoons. You're waiting a half hour doing homework, waiting for practice to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like after school. Like there are these things that just show that your ability to go beyond what the normal person is willing to do something that is great, like score a goal, hit his 70 mile, 80 mile, 100 mile per hour fastball, right? Like, you know, spike the winning point in volleyball, like whatever these things are that some athlete is training for, ultimately gives them, you know, this unparalleled grit and determination to win, which in essence is like what I'm trying to do with strong coffee. Like I'm just trying to win, you know, and that doesn't mean like beat everybody, but if that's what it means, then sure, that's what I'm trying to do. Right. But like, if we want to like stick in this like whole woke conscious ideology of like, there's room for everybody. Well then, okay, no, I'm not trying to beat everyone, but I am trying to fucking win. So that means there's going to be a loser and a winner. Right. And the way ads work, right? Like the way digital marketing works, you know, the way Amazon works is there's a winner and there's a fucking loser. Like the person who pays $23 to see like an ad versus the person who will pay $22 to see an ad. The person who paid $23, they're willing to pay that extra dollar, that grit, that determination, and they'll get that customer. Right? So it's like betting on yourself. That's the other aspect to being an entrepreneur, being an athlete. You're willing to bet on yourself. If you are not a player that says, give me the fucking ball when there's 10 seconds left on it, I don't want you on my team. I want a team of 30 guys that are going to say, give me the ball when there's only 10 seconds left. I got this shit, right? Because then that means if I delegate every one of them to have their own ability and their position to own that position, I know that every time they have the ball, they're fucking dunking it, right? Versus somebody who's like, no, man, I'm more of an assist guy. You know, it's like, oh man, you are not the person for this team, right? Like I am looking for people who want to win, right? I want people who want to always be the scorer, the winning scorer, because like in every department, we're going to need that person. So I think that those things all are why athletes make great entrepreneurs, focused individuals, maybe not always the best parents. I'll tell you that. There's a lot of selfishness in athletes that is, you know, that it exists and it's hard for them to remove themselves from because of the vanity of it. But I've seen a lot of athletes struggle in parenthood until they accept that they're a parent and then they fucking rock at it. You know, versus like in the beginning, they're like, this isn't really for me. You know, I can't work out like I used to, you know, or like whatever.
Yeah. That's sounds like you might have some personal experience there.
I mean, me personally, I was so excited to have kids. That shit doesn't bug me. I wake up at 5 a.m. and work out like a real man. Right. You know, it's like, and like, to be honest with you, I feel that if you're not working out in the morning before your day starts, you're already behind, right? Like I am a strong believer in working out before you get your kids up, right? Before you open up your phone, before you start looking at emails, because like if your goal, like obviously you got your money game covered, you're doing your shit, your responsibilities, but your personal health, if you can't give that an hour before you go and dive into 8 hours or a half a day's worth of work before you take a break, your priorities are really backwards in the game of life.
Have you always worked out in the morning?
I have. Yeah. I have a couple of reasons why. Other than the fact that it makes you tougher and time management, but sleep. So our greatest tools for sleep are actually how we wake up. And when we work out and when we eat food in the morning and when we see sunlight actually are 3 very big determiners of our sleep potential and quality. So any time after about 1 p.m. that you work out, you're reducing your REM by roughly 10%, like every hour past that time.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at somebody says who works out at 5 p.m., they're affecting their REM roughly by about 30% reduction in average REM than they would if they worked out in the morning pre-noon.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial. So if you are somebody who has, say, weight issues that you can't seem to lose weight, or you have energy, like adrenal issues that you just can't seem to recover, and you're somebody who's like, I eat right, I work out every day after work, this and that. Well, it's because you're working out every day after work that I would start pointing a finger at of why you're not getting great sleep, therefore not recovering, therefore your appetite is not right. All these things get way thrown off, cortisol, stress hormones, So working out in the morning, better sleep.
Wow.
I also like to eat breakfast, right? I believe that intermittent fasting is actually what we should be doing, but I believe that we have it on its head and we have been doing it backwards as an industry this entire fucking time. And that my goal for the remainder of 2023 and 2024 is to educate people going forward on reverse intermittent fasting, which is what I call it, which funny enough, it's not actually reverse intermittent fasting. It would actually be regular fasting, but because marketing fucked it all up and people writing books that cater to conventional psychology to make the science sound attractive, they needed adoption. So they made intermittent fasting about eating in the afternoons into the night because it would make it more socially acceptable. The fact of the matter is we should be eating breakfast earlier in the day, and we should stop eating at around 2 p.m. and break fast at like 6 a.m., making our 12-hour plus fast. So it's because by eating breakfast, you're going to start increasing leptin and ghrelin, which, are a part of sleep. And those are activated again through activity, sunlight, and eating foods in the morning. So that will help balance your sleep better. So the other reason is I just get I get so sucked into my work that if I start working before working out, I'm just not going to work out that day. I have put all of my energy. I am an all-in guy, right? Like I will sit down and do digital ads for 10 hours straight, and my wife literally just slides meals in front of me. And it's like, that is just the way I am. I get hyper focused because I have to, because if I don't, I'm all out. I can't just kind of half noodle a fucking day job for 8 hours. Like, no way. I'd get fired for that. People would be like, dude, he tested so well in the interviews. But it's just like, I just couldn't noodle some bullshit for 8 hours. I'd finish it in a day. And they'd be like, this was like a month's worth of work. Hold on a second.
Yeah. That's well, now I'm curious about now I want to try, because for me, I've always been like a workout in the afternoon guy. I think that's because of my probably just as a high school athlete. Like that's when all started, right? You go to school in the morning, you wait until the end of the day to work out, and then you have sports after that, and then you go home, do all your homework, fall asleep when you can. Except then I gamed until 2 a.m. So that was where I messed all that up. But now I'm so used to working out at 4 or 5 o'clock. I would love to have a morning workout habit. But it's not happening at this point in my life. Maybe another point in my life. Maybe once I get past the newborn toddler phases of my children and they're sleeping in and the afternoons are more busy. I don't know. Anyways,
once you get to the fact of they're going to bed at 8 o'clock and they're sleeping till 6 in the morning, it's just you just figure out what is the average that they're waking up at. Give yourself 1 hour and 10 minutes before that. So it's hey, they wake up every day roughly 6:30. Cool. wake up at 5, be working out by 5:15. Kid starts crying. It's probably 6:30. You've been working out for an hour and 15 minutes, and it's like kids are like fucking clockwork like that. So it's just like, that's like how I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be I was obviously an after school athlete. So
Mm-hmm.
the 4 o'clock window was my favorite window too. Like the 3:30, 4 PM window, my
Mm-hmm.
brain and body were conditioned around that for so many reasons.
Yeah.
But once I started, working for myself, owning a business, I found that there's this like funny phenomenon that kind of happens when you train people, is that your brain is like, dude, we've been at the gym for like 3.5 hours doing shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course we've worked out. Like, you don't have the same desire to
Mm.
work out because you've put people through workouts, and the way your brain visualizes things, it like also then therefore has done those things.
Yeah. Like
Right. So
you have worked out through just you. What's the?
it's like sympathy working out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
That's
like
what
sympathy fitness. Right. Um, yeah. So that would happen. And I'd literally have to convince
I,
myself.
vicariously working out. That's the term.
Yeah, like vicariously
Vicarious
working out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would literally vicariously work out through people, and I'd be like, fuck, I have to convince myself to work out after training 5 clients in a row that I did not already work out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually a hard conversation to have with myself. It's just like, it would be like difficult to be like, no, but I didn't do anything. Like, I actually have to go work out now. And I'd be like, ugh, I don't want to bench. I've done bench 5 times today.
Yeah.
It was really a mind fuck. So I knew that I had to train early, and with just all things, and then having kids, getting them off to school by, waking them up at 6 a.m., getting them off to school by 7.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that by the time I got them off to school, my phone's already ringing because people in New York, so then I'm just like, fuck it. 5 a.m. is the time. And, I think that it's also great because you also are then moving your spinal cord early in the day, which gets your juices flowing, brain-derived neurotropic factors, moving quicker, just neurological synapses. I think your posture will be better throughout the day, while, post working out, because of, intuitive postural engagement that like happens just through training, and like the benefit that could like follow for hours to come, based off of like feeling those muscles. So there's like a lot of different reasons of like why one could stop convincing themselves that working out in the afternoon is better.
Yeah.
Plus, if you're eating in the morning, you can front load all that food and backfill all that food. So it's like, you got to work out. Now you get to eat because you fucking worked out. You're going to be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I ran 8 miles last Wednesday at like 6 a.m. I came back and I was just starving. Mm-hmm. I mean, I literally just ate all day. Made it so easy to eat all my food. And by like 3 p.m., I was done eating.
Yeah. So you said this just now, and it came up kind of, just this theme came up repeatedly through our interview. But I wanted to ask you about, what do you do to facilitate personal reflection, or like how do you work that into your day? Is it something that just happens like throughout the day when, it doesn't sound like it's something that you can just do while you're working based on your level of intensity when you work? So how do you facilitate that time for self-reflect? Because it sounds like it's something that you do a lot of, and I'm just curious, like, what is your process for that, and how do you work it into your life?
I was self-reflecting while you were talking to me right now. To be honest with you, being ADHD, my brain does have an ability to kind of snap into a deep reflective state while I'm very deep in focus on work, especially when I'm doing creative stuff, not writing. But if I'm designing something, all of a sudden I'll start staring at a line and I'll disappear for 10 minutes. And I am like deep intrinsic, thoughts are happening, moves of strong coffee, like how far am I going to run today? What's going on with my relationship with my mom? You know, like whatever will come to me that needs like to be resolved
Mm-hmm.
and reflected on. I do a lot of balance work, which is a ultimate, presence grabber. It's like you have to be 100% present to do balancing.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to get a lot of reflection, deep meditative state while doing slackline. I spend at least 15 minutes on a slackline a day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I run first 2-3 miles. I'm telling myself I suck. Next 5 to 6, I'm reflecting on, past stuff and future things, whatever, because your mind kind of starts to finally escape from your body, at
Mm-hmm.
a certain distance that your body is on autopilot and your brain can exit the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely get plenty of time. I mean, I don't want it to, bounce back to it, but like smoking weed, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I still do it daily. And that obviously provides a certain sense, an ability to, reflect very quickly. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a space that your just brain is inundated with
Mm-hmm.
analytical information and bullshit that just doesn't fucking matter. I mean, like, if you have things that are going on in your life that are distracting and keeping you from presence and reflection and growth, you
Mm-hmm.
generally have to ask like yourself, is there a way that I could even control this thing or change
Mm-hmm.
this thing? And if not, like, then why am I going to continue to allow it to distract me from everything else?
Yeah. I just
Right.
and I just I just want to jump in right now, and because a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are like 50s, 60s, and I think we might have an outdated thoughts on marijuana in general, because I have friends who work in cannabis, and this idea that pot is something, or marijuana is something that's like, you know, I don't know, whatever you think. If you think
Well,
that
here, let's
marijuana
tell
is
them what to
bad,
think. I'll tell them what to think more. So yeah,
yeah, like it's something. It's yeah. Go ahead, you tell, because I don't smoke. Like I
yeah,
just
and
don't.
dude, I
But
know that
like,
about you. It's,
but
I
the
think
idea,
I think I asked you one time to smoke with me, and you were like, "Yeah, I don't smoke weed." I'm like, "Oh, cool, man."
yeah.
I don't judge anybody for not. What I do judge is people who have something negative to say about it, but also haven't done the education to understand why they're saying something negative.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, like if you say smoking's bad, but you drink 4 drinks a day, like that's messed up.
well,
Or
yeah,
if you drink
obviously
like
your
twice a
priorities
day,
are fucked.
yeah.
You're just paying attention to what the government is saying, not what like science would actually say.
Hmm.
So, I mean, cannabis is a great tool for people, especially with ADD, because of the dopamine and serotonin effects that it can have. Which, because I'm ADHD, I have a higher likelihood of norepinephrine and adrenaline being released with my hyperactive disorder. So therefore, marijuana effectively balances my neurochemistry in a way that they I'm gonna sneeze. Cannabis. So it's there is a lot of positive properties about it. I don't condone it for everybody. I am not somebody who's saying that it's great for your lungs. There's good and bad. Um, I also said that I'm like not smoking as much, which I think is great. I find that my overall just energy and health feels like way better with a balance. Not smoking at all doesn't feel great. And it's not like a dependence thing, as it is so much that if I don't smoke weed, I have anxiety where anybody else in the world would be like, oh, well, why don't you just go get anxiety medication?
Mm.
Well, no. It's like I would rather smoke a little bit of weed when I need it than be drugged up on fucking pills all the time, have a suppressed appetite and have liver enzymes that are all fucked up.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I choose it that way. And it's not for everybody, but it is for a lot of people. A lot more people smoke weed than people even realize.
Yeah. And I think
President Obama smokes weed.
that's
I don't know what that means, but I'm just most 50-year-old like more liberal people would be like, oh, but like let's be real. There's a reason why it's legalized in all the states that they live.
Yeah.
That and tax money. You make a lot of money on taxes with it.
That's true. Yeah. I just
my
knew
marijuana use is paying for your highways.
Yeah. You're right.
I'm always fucking right.
Yeah. I did want to just say a quick thing because I know that people were going to hear that and be like, drugs are bad. I'm like, whoa. And we won't get into all the psychedelic stuff. I think that's another conversation another day. But so these interviews kind of have a part 2 question. This is the fast part. And I ask these questions to everybody who jumps on the podcast. And I'm curious to see what your answers are. So you ready?
Bonus round.
That's what this should be called. What do you think is one habit, belief, or mindset that has helped you the most in terms of your overall happiness?
That things are happening for me, not to me.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. What's one thing you do for your health that you believe is overlooked or undervalued by others?
Balance training.
Man, I got to get a slap. I think I'm going to hook it up to I don't have trees. I'm going to have to hook it up to a fence somehow.
Careful. You could literally bend fence posts with it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's wild. So if you're like a foot away from like the point of like, you got 2 posts and it's a slack line, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you're like standing right next to the slack line, it's like, yeah, you weigh 165 pounds, like whatever the fuck you weigh. You move 10 feet away from the slack line, you now have 325 pounds. You move into the middle of the slack line, you're now like 700, 800 pounds that are like being applied to that post. So I've literally seen concrete like spider web with like solid metal beams and the slack line attached to it, and the concrete spider webbing from the stress cracks of like the metal just flexing from the slack line. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
All right. So
there's a thing called a Gibbons board. Gibbons should pay me money just for talking about these things all the time. So there's a Gibbons board, and it looks like it's about the size of a snowboard, and it has a slack line across that's like slung across the nose. And you can like stand on it and balance it, like tip it and do all these cool things that are really great for your balance. You don't need a slack line. People, you could use a 2x4 on the floor. There's a lot of things that could elevate people's balance that just nobody is doing.
Yeah, but Adam, think about how much cooler slackline looks.
Well, slackline is way fucking cooler. I just posted a video today where
I saw it.
I did one where I took my hoodie off and I put my hoodie back on while standing on the slack line. Oh, wow. And it's just like kind of like the idea of like, taking off my hoodie and then, then putting it all back on while I'm balancing, working on my vestibular reflex ocular vision.
Super cool. All right. What's the most important activity you regularly do for your overall stress management?
Sex.
Okay. How often?
Like 5 times a week.
Okay. I thought you were going to say 5 times a day.
I mean, sometimes twice a day. I mean, it really depends if my wife's and I are both working from home that day.
Well, good for you guys.
Yeah, totally. We've changed the sheets multiple times in one day before, thinking it was the last time.
Oh my God. All right. What's the most stressful part of your day-to-day life?
Having sex every day. No, I'm just kidding.
It must be, yeah.
Because she expects it. No, I'm just kidding.
5 times a day. It must be stressful, yeah.
Yeah, no. What is my most stressful part of the day? Man, I fucking hate financial stuff. I just numbers and finance with strong coffee. We're a multi-million dollar business, and it's just a lot to process as like a small company. And
Mhm.
I'm a creative, flowy person with I have a very interesting strategic mind that has helped Strong Coffee get this far,
Mhm.
with very little, resources. But I do not like I do not ever want to see a fucking spreadsheet ever.
Mhm.
It's just like the
So you have
worst.
so you have somebody who looks at your numbers for you and analytics and all of that kind of
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, to be honest, no, I still do it, which sucks,
Mhm.
but like starting very soon, I won't be. So,
Mhm. Yeah. All right, and last question. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing men and their well-being right now?
um, emotions. I think I think men need to, be more focused on their emotional health. But I think before you can be emotionally healthy, you also have to look at your brain health. And depending on what your sleep is like, your alcohol intake, things like that, if your brain is not healthy, how can you have mental health? And I think that that's like a big thing that is constantly overlooked in the conversation of emotional mental health, is how healthy is your actual physical property before we start
Mm.
talking about the software that exists within it. So how's your hardware?
2 minutes. 2 minutes. Go into that in a little bit more detail.
2 minutes. All right.
Yes.
So people who tend to have lack of sleep will have certain hormones that are out of whack, right? So
Hmm.
your dopamine or serotonin, say if you drink alcohol, you're going to affect your serotonin levels as well, because serotonin is created in the gut. So your gut bacteria is going to be off from all the alcohol.
Hmm.
If you eat sugars, it's going to be off. There's like all these different things. So your brain is a physical piece of property. I mean, it's a hardware, right? It's a system of working pieces that revolve around the software in itself, which has emotional health as a part of the programming, mental health, cognitive function, right? All these learning skills, languages, right? Those are all softwares that are put into this physical piece. But if this physical piece is not healthy, if it is not hydrated, if it does not have the proper amount of fats, for its nutrient needs, if it's not creating acetylcholine, if it's not, if your blood-brain barrier is all inflamed and none of your nutrients are getting into your fucking brain, well, then
Hmm.
like, how would you imagine that this thing is going to operate the right way? Of course, you're going to be depressed. Of course, you're going to be
Hmm.
tired. Of course, you're going to have manic states or
Hmm.
bipolar or any one of those things. I classify myself as somebody who's like had ADHD. I eat
Hmm.
a certain way and do a certain thing that nobody would classify me that as if I took a fucking test right now,
Hmm.
but it's like that was a diagnosis I was given, but I altered my existence through bettering the health of my brain by utilizing MCTs or low inflammatory foods or consuming adaptogens to reduce stress. Stress in itself can literally scar your brain.
Hmm.
Sugar itself can literally scar your brain. If your brain is scarred and the very surface of your brain has neurological signals and thoughts and memories and emotions on it, and you're scarring your brain, what do you think is going to happen to those things? They're going to get fucked up like a CD in the 90s that you think blowing on and licking is going to like fucking make it work. It's like those like blowing and that licking, that's like where like the supplements and the eating come in, and like you try to fix those things, but like ultimately it's just a daily mindset that you have to like take care of. It's so funny that it just goes so overlooked in the fitness world, where everybody's talking about their fucking biceps, their mobility, their flexibility, emotional health, because it's like sexy, because who doesn't want to not be depressed or not have a friend kill themselves? And like, I get all that shit, but like, why isn't anybody actually talking about the fucking foods we eat and the lack of certain nutrients getting into the brain and
Hmm.
so on and so forth, of what we're ingesting that could be actually affecting the ability to have emotional and mental health?
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, that was a 2 minutes well explained. Thank you for expanding on that.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
well, I mean, Adam, I think this is an awesome conversation. You're a fascinating individual with a fascinating history. Um, if we hang out in the near future, I would like to make sure that there is a strong coffee on hand so that I am mentally able to keep up with where your brain and or body is going, because there's a lot of energy coming from you, man. Um, Hopefully at that point I will have had a couple more naps and I won't be waking up multiple times per night to feed a screaming 7 pound thing. Um, but yeah, thanks for joining me on the Better Man podcast. That was awesome.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And in closing, I let my kids 9 and 8 watch Stranger Things yesterday. They were begging me,
Uh
and I'm
huh.
like, it was just dad and the girls all day. Mom was working, and
Uh,
I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm telling you, you're going to be scared. I'm like, I don't want to hear no, well, like I'm scared at nighttime. They're like, no, Dad, we're fine. So we binge watch Stranger Things, cuddle up on the couch. At
yeah.
8 o'clock, I put them to bed, and I just hear this soft whimpering of fear. I was
uh,
up and down all night with two little scaredy girls,
season
and so
was
I
this
feel your
season
pain, man.
was
I
this
feel your
season one?
season one. Yeah,
Okay, season one was scary.
yeah, it was. It
That
was.
was scary.
Yeah.
To be fair to them.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
totally was. I mean, I'm blown away that they watched it. I fell asleep on the couch for an hour, so I think I missed some of the scary parts that I've completely forgot were the main
yeah,
creature, the
it
Demi
is.
Morgan.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't want to not mention strong coffee before we finish. Can you talk about strong coffee, the mission, and how people can learn more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll drop real quick. I mean, strong coffee started all as a recipe I was making every morning, blending, brewing coffee. I found incredible ingredients and was able to source, an incredible instant coffee and combine it with some awesome ingredients like grass-fed collagen protein, healthy fats, and certain amino acids and organic nootropics and adaptogens that have very interesting studies when it comes to assisting brain health. I mentioned a neuroprotein earlier with the spinal cord called BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factors, which is a protein in the brain that is actually what they measure when they look at correlative studies between Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease in other cultures. So BDNF is, this really important thing. Well, in America, our BDNF is like way lower than somewhere like India. And when you look at the likelihood of a neurodegenerative disease in India, it's like way lower, where, about 5 to 10% of their population versus us, like around 55 to 60%.
Hmm.
So the difference is their level of BDNF. So while our coffee has all the great proteins, healthy fats, and adaptogens, and all these sexy things that we hear in marketing, it has this organic nutraceutical that is an extract of coffee berry itself that is actually clinically proven and trademarked to increase that neuroprotein in the brain by almost 200% per cup of coffee. So the equivalent of seeing a response of BDNF to that level is like a multi-hour walk.
Hmm.
And you would like a high intense multi-hour walk would provide the same level of increased BDNF. BDNF is affected by movement and nutrient dense foods.
Wow.
So
How
uh,
does it work? I mean, not how does it work? Is it a how is it consumed? What is it? Is it like, how do you
so
make it?
so strong coffee is 100% instant, right? So you just you take a scoop or a packet of
Hmm.
our formula, you throw it in a mug, pour some hot water over it, stir it for a couple of seconds, and you're out the door. It has 15 grams of protein, 5 grams of coconut derived fats. It's not all MCTs, so it's easy on the stomach. It has fiber in it, so it's great for blood sugar and for
Wow.
pooping. And then
I
it
cannot
has
I cannot overstate the importance of having nice daily poops, by the way. If you don't have them, You should get them.
My I have multiple friends that tell me one of their biggest things beyond strong coffee tasting good being number one is two being how regular their pooping is since they started drinking it.
Hmm.
Where they drink 1 cup of strong coffee or like a half a cup and they're on the bathroom pooping everything out and it's just like a clean break and then they're like crushing the day. And it's cool because the more comfortable customers get with me, the more and more I hear that that's like a top reason of what they love about it. But it's like you look at the type of fats that we're putting in there and they help you with like gut function. So it makes sense that that plus the fiber that you would have really nice shits.
Okay. Can I oh god, we didn't talk about this beforehand. Can we get something special to people in Manful Yoga world if they go get some strong coffee to try it out?
Yeah, you tell me whatever the code will be, and I'll give everybody 15% off to try
Manflow Yoga.
Manflow Yoga. I will make the code right meow, and
Yes.
we'll have a 15% off coupon for anybody that uses it.
Nifty. Sweet. And your guys' social is highly entertaining. So you guys should go follow. I'm assuming you're on TikTok too.
We are, yeah.
Okay. TikTok, Instagram, are you
Strong
on?
Coffee Company.
Cool. So go follow them. They're funny. And yeah, Adam's a beautiful human being too. So you will want to see him as well. So there. Sweet. Well, again, Adam, thanks again for joining me, man. I'm inspired to actually try some of this strong coffee. I don't think I've actually tried. Maybe I had it like 10 years ago or like 8 years ago, whenever it was founded, but
Yeah,
I don't think I've had
like I think you may have had it 5 years ago at Paleo FX.
Okay. 5 years ago.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
was there with Barbell Shrugged, and I saw you for a little bit. That's when I got
Yes.
around the time you sent me your book.
Okay. All right. So it's been a while. You've
Yeah.
probably gone through some iterations of formula since then.
Yeah, for sure. I've
Yeah.
reiterated our star latte by 32 reiterations.
Okay. Oh,
Our
wow.
vanilla latte, which is our number one selling product.
Do you have non-flavors too? Or is it like it's all flavored ones? Do you have a
We have a
basic non?
cacao latte, a vanilla latte, and a honey lavender latte, and then we have
Ooh.
a black coffee with adaptogens and nootropics.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna try I'm gonna try a few of those. All right, sweet.
Amazing.
All right, man. Well, this is awesome. Thanks again for joining me on the Better Man podcast. Guys, I hope this inspires you to be a better man. And you guys should make sure you go check out Adam and Strong Coffee and all that he does. So thanks again, Adam.
Boom.
Sweet. Boom.
Appreciate you, man.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please be sure to check out Adam and the Strong Coffee Company on social media. They have a really entertaining social media. Their Instagram is awesome. It's funny. Check it out at The Strong Coffee. And if you're interested in trying some strong coffee yourself, head to strongcoffeecompany.com and use the code ManfulYoga to get 15% off your purchase. If you enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't done so already on Apple Podcasts, we're getting really close to 100 reviews. I'd love to see us hit that number. And if you can help me out, I'd really appreciate it. Lastly, one of the best ways to implement what we discuss here in the Better Man podcast is by getting into a habit of consistent exercise. One of the easiest ways to do that is through the Manful Yoga app and members area. Sign up, follow the set path of programs, do your best on the workouts, and within a few weeks, you're going to notice the results. You're going to be feeling better, moving better, and just feeling better day to day, both physically and mentally. We also have a brand new Getting Started series to make it easy to get started and learn about strategies and tips to overcome the challenges that come with following a workout program. You can learn more and sign up at mfy.tv/join. Guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it inspires you to be a better man, and I'll see you on the next one. If you like that episode, check out this other one right here. I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you haven't subscribed, click this subscribe button over here, and you can listen to the full episodes on any major podcasting platform. Full details below in the description.